Hello, welcome.
Hi, welcome to the Stream of Truth. I'm Dr. Tassel Faith Shamebrook,
And I'm Sean Kelly.
and today we are talking about addiction and recovery.
Yeah, addiction and recovery. I think we mentioned in the last stream that I'm quitting smoking. So it's been like, a bit over 3 days.
Yes, just about over, yeah.
And so it's been going amazing. Oh my God. But we thought it was a good topic to talk about because it doesn't always have to be something that's like a substance or it doesn't have to be alcohol or tobacco. Addictions come in many flavors, and we
Yes.
wanted to sort of dive into that topic and talk about our experience with our own addictions and of how we've sort of seen them and what we think they are. Just go deep into it.
Yeah, one of the first things that come to mind is behavioral addictions. Like you said, when we think of addictions, we often think of substances, but probably a lot of us also have some behavioral addictions that we might not
Totally.
even realize as addictions. Um, yeah. So, do you want to start with maybe why we think that we get into addictions in the first place?
Sure. So, yeah, do you want to start?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay. So I think I'll just start with some of my addictions and then why I think I have these addictions and then practices that do help me reduce my addictions. Okay, so my addictive behaviors are, well, first of all, eating. I think I have a thing with eating. And then anything to do around cleaning, organizing, working, improving. Those are, I would say, can be quite addictive behaviors for me.
Ah, okay.
And I think that I engage in those behaviors uh, in order to feel safe.
Right.
So I think what happens is I'll have some fear come up, and um, I do try to sit with my feelings. That is definitely a huge practice of mine. But sometimes I avoid my feelings and I'll just go into, say, like a work mode. And that's a way for, it's sort of a band aid of feeling safe for me.
Right.
Um, and yeah, so I'll just start with that. What about you?
So for me, I went through different stages of like addictive type things throughout my life.
Yeah.
A while ago, it was difficult for me to remain sober. Like I felt being sober was challenging.
Yeah.
And I can't remember exactly what was challenging about it. I think it was like, I think what I was trying to do was dull my experience a little bit. And so I would make sure that throughout my day I would have some type of buzz going on.
Ah.
Like this was a while back, but I'd make sure that I had some type of buzz going on, some type of inebriation, but not to any degree that would impede me in any way. Um, and I tried to always make sure that I was like, capable of doing everything that I needed to do. So it's hard to sort of explain, but I had a sort of addiction to being intoxicated, or to dulling I think my mind. I was a little racy in my mind, and I was trying to slow it all down. That's primarily where it started from, I think. And so I think that's where most addictions start from, like in substances and stuff like that, is they're looking for some other state, right?
Yes.
Than what is
Yes.
naturally there. And what's
Yes.
natural is not comfortable.
Yep.
So they're trying to get into some other state. Later, with cigarettes, I think I started smoking literally because I wanted something to do in between classes in high school. I think it was mostly boredom. Like I just saw these other kids smoking. A bunch of my friends were out there smoking in like the smoking area, and I was like, that seems like a good way to pass this 15 minutes between classes. Like, what else am I going to do?
Yeah.
Right? And then I had friends out there, so I went out and started smoking just because there were people out there doing that. But then you become physically addicted, of course, and it turns into a whole nightmare. And, you know, I was told not to smoke, but I didn't listen, as with most things I'm told not to do. So my addictive behavior started with substance stuff. And then, you know, that started back when I was around 14, with marijuana. And then, you know, got a little bit more progressed into different things and tried a whole smorgasbord of narcotics and stuff.
Yeah.
Had a bit of a party. You know, I developed that sort of just tendency to not want to be sober. But now I have other addictions like smoking. I also notice that when I get very, very stressed out, I want to drink. I don't really drink, but when I get really stressed out, like, or I haven't drank in a few months or whatever, but when I get very stressed out, something really, you know, stressful is happening in my life, I can feel myself wanting to drink. And then I'm also addicted to, like, sort of sleeping.
Yeah.
I really like sleeping.
Yeah. Yes.
I'm addicted to sleeping right now, but I haven't always been that way. I'm not sure if it's like my body needs more right now, or I don't know what it is. But there's been that, and then, you know, there's been other things as well. But I think, like you said, it's always, it's usually something that we can do physically to, like, help us feel better somehow.
Yes.
Right? And there's so many addictions. Some people are addicted to their phone. I used to be addicted to my phone, basically, too.
Yeah.
You know, just very stuck on my phone looking at Facebook or Reddit or something.
Yeah.
Not so much Facebook, but mostly Reddit or other things. But I used to be addicted to that. And I think it's all avoiding the self, you know?
Yes.
Good morning, Jamie.
Yeah.
And good morning, Debbie. Thank you for coming.
I think it's so interesting, everything you've shared, that you started smoking in high school or late middle school,
I was like
because
14.
you were bored.
I was bored between classes, and my friends were going out there.
Yeah. And so the smoking was from boredom, and then you also said that you were uncomfortable for most of your life just being sober.
The sobriety was sort of boring also.
Yeah.
To me, yeah.
So I think it's really interesting too, as kids or as teenagers, where a teenager really doesn't have as much agency to change their life as, say, maybe an adult does, who's sovereign and living on their own. So it makes sense that teenagers, in order to avoid these really uncomfortable feelings that probably, first of all, they don't really know how to feel them. Mm-hmm. It's scary to feel them. And then even if they do feel them, it's not super easy as a kid or a teenager to really change your life in the same way that an adult can. So it just sort of contextually makes sense that it would be sort of a path of least resistance to engage in some type of, like, substance use.
And honestly, being in school was so stressful for me.
And stressful, boring.
It was the worst.
Worst. Yeah.
I hated it.
Yeah.
All the regimented learning and the teachers being rude to me because I would ask questions they didn't like.
Yeah.
I didn't like. There were occasional classes with occasional teachers that did a good job, and I liked them.
Yeah.
But for the most part, school was a stressful mess of boredom.
Yes. Stressful, boring.
Yeah.
There's a really great saying that I love from my therapy training. It's, how does this person's behavior make sense given their context? So we're not advocating for substance use, but we're just saying that it makes sense that starting even as teenagers, in order to deal with stress and boredom in our lives, that there might be turning to substances. So just sort of starting with that it just sort of makes sense that people can become addicted to these substances because they're experiencing very difficult inner states.
Mm-hmm.
And there isn't much education or support, starting with teenagers, of like how to feel your feelings or what to do with them, or even that like it's okay to feel your feelings. It's just not really done.
No, I don't think kids know at all. I don't think we're taught at all.
No, it's mostly we're taught to sort of turn away from our inner state and
Exactly.
just do what we're told to do. So I think we're just starting with a baseline of addiction to substances or behaviors is understandable in our very stressful and simultaneously at times very boring society that we all have to deal with, starting from when we were kids.
Yeah.
So it makes sense.
And any addiction, I find it has an energetic drain on the person. So,
yes.
like anytime we feel we have to do anything, like it pulls on us. It doesn't let us be our sovereign self as much, right?
Yeah, it's like a toxic Band-Aid.
Yeah,
basically. It maybe
basically.
helps in a very short-term way,
Yeah.
but then, as you said, it really drains us. And then it really keeps taking us away from our inner truth.
Right.
That we might not know what to do with. We might
Yeah.
not know what to do with our inner truth.
And I also I think there's a very big distinction between like an abuse of substances and then using substances for
Like entertainment. Or...
entertainment or consciousness exploration.
Mm-hmm.
Like ayahuasca or psilocybin,
Plant medicines.
DMT,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Cannabis as well. There are a lot of these are all those that I mentioned are natural. They're not very addictive. Well, marijuana can be, but they're not very addictive. The other ones, basically because they're kind of wacky experiences. You're not really gonna do those every day.
Right.
Right. But there's a lot of like benefit that can be had from using these to explore your own consciousness and to heal.
Yeah.
Do past life regressions and other healing work. And even with cannabis, you can do that. So really what we're talking about, I think, is attachments, and when it becomes like such a habit that it like interferes with things, and it you're kind of thinking about it when it's not right in front of you, like when, you know what I mean, like maybe you can't wait to get home from work so you can drink, or so you can whatever.
Yeah.
That's when you can tell the addiction's forming. At least it's starting to form. If you're at work and already thinking, can't wait to leave so I can have a drink, on occasion, sure, but like if that's a continual type of thing, then there's something to look at there.
And I think it's really helpful to do this self-reflection work about things that you think you might be addicted to, like why why am I turning to this substance or to this behavior in these moments? What is actually internally going on for me in these moments when then I want to do this thing? And I'll just give an example. So I think eating is an addictive behavior for me. And I notice one of the times I'm most likely to want to eat when I'm not hungry is towards the end of the day when I'm making dinner for my kids. And I realize I'm really bored. I'm usually alone in the kitchen. My kids are usually somewhere else. And I'm usually tired. And I really probably don't want to be cooking dinner in that moment. And so I sort of reach for something to eat as a way to like keep myself going, basically. Like a crutch. It's a crutch in those moments. Because I'm not really super aligned and maybe really happy with what's going on. So that's one of the things I notice. And then what I realized from that is what would be ultimately more beneficial to me is if somehow I could shift how I do things around that. For instance, maybe my kids are with me in the kitchen. Maybe we're all cooking together. Yeah. Maybe there's a way to make it more fun instead of just like reaching for like a snack. Yeah.
And I've noticed now after quitting smoking, I mentioned it last night, I don't know what to do with myself.
Yeah.
I have so much extra time.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, what do I do? Um, and I didn't really realize how addicted I was as well to smoking, like how difficult it was going to be and stuff like that. It kind of took me by surprise.
Can I ask you a few questions because you're right in the middle of
Yeah,
stopping smoking, so I think it's a great sort of
sure.
example. So first of all, how long had you been smoking before you've quitting now?
It's hard to know exactly. I started when I was 14. Um, I started off a little slow, so I was only smoking, a couple times a day, and then started to ramp up a little bit. Um, I went through a period probably around 22 or 21 where I quit for a year or 2 years, 3 years,
Mm-hmm.
and then I started again. Uh, I can't even remember why. It was just one of those. Somebody asked me if I wanted a cigarette, and I said okay,
Mm-hmm.
and then I just started again. So about 10 years or so.
In
May
this last round. So
Yeah,
maybe 7-ish years when you were more a teenager.
yeah, and then a
Mm-hmm.
couple of the last 10 years I was vaping
Okay.
instead of smoking, and then I went back to smoking. And I don't remember why either.
But largely over, say, almost 20 years or so, it's been a part of
I've
your
been
life.
more or less smoking, other than a couple of years, for yeah, about 20,
Yeah. And so
20 years or so.
what prompted you to stop smoking?
Um, you mostly, mostly it was you. Yeah, mostly. You brought up many times that you don't like me smoking, basically, that you're worried about my health.
Yeah.
Not that you don't, not that you won't let me, or like, like you're not allowed, or it was nothing like that. It was just concern for me.
For your health.
You brought it up a lot of times.
Yeah.
And you know, inside I was noticing that I have this, like, I have to plan stuff around my smoking, that I was like, just, it was like being a bit of a drag, like a bit of a drag on my energy, um, and that type of thing. So I didn't. It was mostly you that got me onto that way of thinking.
Yeah.
Um, I was fine with it, and I don't have really, like, side effects from it as much. I did have that tooth break, but I don't think that the teeth thing's from smoking. Or if it is, then the damage has been done by now. Um, but uh, yeah, it wasn't any symptoms or any uncomfortableness or discomfort. Uncomfortableness. I don't think that's a word. Uncomfortableness or discomfort.
Yeah.
I don't think it was anything like that, really. Um, it was mostly you kept bringing it up, and then a part of me sort of was feeling like, well, let's just try it. Let's try not smoking, that type of thing. Um, it's hard to say. I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't really know.
And you have said throughout over the months
I think I
that
feel better
you've
when I'm not smoking.
right.
I think that I forget.
Mm-hmm.
I think that when I'm smoking, there's a bunch of different effects on the body that are kind of subtly introduced. You don't really notice them, and then as you come out of it, you realize that you're feeling a lot better. I think you'll have more energy, more stable mood, stuff like that.
And this is your third day
Yep.
over 72 hours. How has the experience been for you of not
Lo-
smoking?
Lovely. Just bliss. That's how I could describe it. Bliss. It's like riding a unicorn into the clouds. No, it's been hard for me because I've done so much work on myself to not be a dick. right? To not be irritable and agitated and grumpy and stuff. I've done a lot of work so that those feelings, like, I can move through them really easily, and I don't have that type of, response to people. I don't react to people like that. And when I'm quitting, I'm so irritable and agitated that, like, everything that everyone is saying is frustrating. Like, almost everything. And, like, even I think you offered me a sucker last night, a lollipop.
Yeah.
You're like, maybe this will help.
Well, I didn't say that.
You said something like, well, maybe you can, it's because some people do that with the.
Yeah.
You
right.
said,
I did say something like that. I guess you're right.
You were offering me a lollipop, and you said that you can have this instead of a cigarette or something like that, and I was like, I wasn't actually mad, but just everything is frustrating. That's the weird thing about it is, I know that you're just being helpful. I know that.
Yeah.
But I'm still so frustrated, like, about everything.
Yeah.
Everything. So it's hard to explain, but.
And you and I had a interesting interaction on the first day. I was moving through some intense emotional things around my hair, and you were holding space for me. And then at the end, it didn't go so great. And then you said, I really want a cigarette because I got frustrated so easily, and I don't want to be like that. And then you actually went and bought a pack of cigarettes.
Yeah.
And then we talked about it. And then you did decide not to smoke the cigarette.
Yeah. I ended up going for a walk and throwing them away. I didn't want to throw them away in the house in case I'd, like, go root them out in the garbage or something weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. Basically, that's what I didn't like. That's the most uncomfortable part about it for me, is the way that I respond to people and the way that I am with people. I'm somewhat okay to feel irritable in myself, but when I'm, like, being rude and, like, or being just very reactive and not patient, things like that, that's what bothers me the most, I think.
So it's interesting that sometimes we may even continue these addictions because the getting off of them is really difficult, and we're concerned about
how we'll be
in our lives.
And also I've been trying to do channeling,
right,
and having a lot of trouble, like, getting into a balanced, like, a presence to be able to do that, which hasn't been a problem for me at all, really, ever.
So you had concern about how it was affecting, like, our relationship, and how it was affecting actually your work.
Yeah. So I think it affects, basically, quitting smoking sort of affects everything.
Yeah.
And so it's best, Debbie asked, what are some tips with the irritability? And the best tips that I could say, I've been drinking that Mama Cacao stuff.
Mama Cacao, yeah.
I don't know if other people will know what that means.
Yeah,
Mama Cacao, probably that's a Jason thing, but.
Right.
So it's 100% cacao that Tassel got from a shaman. Mm-hmm. And I basically mix that into some milk and boil it with some cinnamon and maple syrup.
Yeah.
And that calms me a lot. I've also been taking ashwagandha and having to take Advil as well for headaches that I've been getting. So those dietary pieces have helped a little bit. They just help to put a little bit of calm in there. They don't do a ton, I'd say. But what I would say is probably the best is, like, basically noticing when you need to just be away from people, and then taking the time if you have to. So even with me being in Nashville and visiting, and I have a limited amount of time here, I still basically took one day and I went to sleep and slept for the whole day. I had a headache, like a migraine type headache as well. So if I didn't have that, I probably would have stayed awake and stayed with everyone. But it was probably best for me to just be by myself for a little while. So trying to recognize when you're, like, in these irritable states, and if you need to, take some space for yourself, give yourself, like, try to understand where you're at and what type of things might trigger you as well. and avoid those things. And sometimes, taking that space to yourself, I think, is helpful.
I love all that. So you basically said, see if there's some things you can support yourself with, something to calm yourself, like mama cacao or ashwagandha or other things like that. And then it seems like it's also really great just to be really truthful with people around you that I'm going to be quitting smoking or quitting something else. And
True, yeah.
I may get really irritable.
Keep reminding them.
Yeah,
Because
so
people
just
forget,
be truthful about that.
especially if they don't smoke or haven't smoked. Trying to explain just how hard it is for you can help them to be in a better place to support you.
And you and I ended up having a conversation about it where I basically said, it's so okay. It seems like it would be so healthy for you to not smoke. So I said, if you're really grumpy and irritable for a while, it is so okay. I just want to support you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You were great. And it's interesting how in the throes of the like nicotine craving tantrums, we tend to want to like blame people that are like trying to help us, and we tend to want to like push the blame on anybody for anything to just get it off. And so even in those moments, I was like getting all agitated and stuff.
Yeah.
And that it's challenging. It's really hard. I think I'm trying to look at it as almost like a practice of maintaining peace.
Yes.
Even though I feel like a nightmare inside.
Yeah.
I'm trying to just maintain peace and stuff. And it's like a little test, I guess. That's how I'm trying to look at it. I think, honestly, too, the most important thing with quitting smoking is really make sure that you want to do it. If you don't want to, it's not going to work. So you have to, I think, in all the times that I've quit, a few different times I've quit for multiple months and stuff like that, and then I end up smoking again in the past. But it only works when you actually really want to do it. When the pressure is external, for me anyways, it helps a little bit, but unless I want to do it, it's not really going to work, most likely. So that would be my biggest recommendation for like when you start to try to quit smoking. Make sure that you want to, like, figure out the reasons you want to and like make them very clear. Another thing that's helped me as well is there's an app you can get on your phone. I think if you just search quit smoking, and you can start a timer. And so you could just look at it to see how many hours it's been,
how long that's been.
how many cigarettes you haven't had.
Oh.
And it like does all this map of this graph, and
yeah, a lot of positivity.
Right.
Around
It's like, oh, I'm doing great. It's like a scorecard sort of. So if that helps you, that might be worth doing. I found that helpful in the past. But doing things that just help you feel relaxed, like taking baths, whatever helps you feel relaxed. I didn't do much to relax other than sleep and smoke. So I'm kind of at a stuck.
Yeah. So is part of you kind of thinking about, oh, what might I want to do in those moments where I used to smoke in order to relax or kind of take a time out?
Yeah, I'm realizing I don't really know how to relax.
Yeah.
That's what I'm sort of realizing now, is I don't really know how to do that. Yeah. Oh, another thing that helps is the nicotine gum, nicotine
spray,
lozenges, the spray. I use the spray, but I think you can't seem to find it.
We don't seem to have it
in Tennessee anyway,
in the United States.
Or Nashville.
Yeah.
Maybe it's in other areas of the United States, but there's a quick mist, like nicotine spray. It helps with those cravings. I don't think the patches work. I don't like the patches. They don't seem to do anything to me. They just make my skin itchy and then make me have weird dreams because I have nicotine flowing through my body all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's I guess what I would offer for quitting smoking. Yeah.
So just to kind of recap, it feels like recognizing an addiction and then moving to reduce or completely stop the addiction, it feels like a journey. And when you're in the middle of quitting it, it feels like you're kind of in this void space, like you're letting go of something, but maybe you haven't totally figured out how to replace the activity or where you're going to go from here. It's just almost akin to like a dark night of the soul in a way, where things are falling away and you don't know exactly what's going to come in.
Totally, yeah. That's a good way to think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think I like this phrase, like, take it as a win. Just take it as a win anytime you are releasing a behavior that you know really isn't serving you. And you might not know exactly what the outcome is going to be or how your life is going to look when that behavior is released, but just, it's so courageous just to be in that journey and just like knowing, okay, this really isn't serving me. I do want to let go of it, and I'm not really sure what my life is going to look like without it, but I know that I want to shift. And just like, I guess, having faith that you can move through it, and that something beautiful will come in that will be more highest and best for you as sort of like a replacement behavior or something.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm thinking is like, you know, maybe I'll work during those times, but I was thinking, you know, maybe I need to try to figure out a different way to relax.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll meditate every hour for 5 minutes. Something like that. That could be fun. I haven't been doing a meditative practice in any consistency. But yeah, I think that trying to figure out what you're going to do in those gaps, like if it's smoking, there's gaps, generally a lot of them.
Yeah.
Depending on, you know, how often you're smoking. And I think my tendency would be to try to fill it with work. But if I do that, I'm just going to feel more stressed, most likely. Unless, you know, like, I guess it depends on what type of work we're talking about. But yeah, I think it's really important to figure out something to replace that with. And yeah, for me, I think I'm going to do meditation or something like that.
And I'm even thinking about one of my addictive behaviors about eating, that I do tend to eat when I'm bored and tired. And probably what would be better than that is like just resting for a few minutes or doing something fun for a few minutes. And I think as a single mom, I'm in this mindset of I must be moving forward at all times. I can't afford to like rest for a minute or something. And because like I can eat and still like do things at the same time. So I think what would help me with that addictive behavior is just releasing that really sort of toxic limiting belief that I always have to be active and doing things in order to like keep everything together.
Yeah. And that's what I don't want to form.
Right.
By not giving myself any space to have breaks.
Yeah. So maybe what we're saying is sometimes we have some of these addictive behaviors because they're a way for us to kind of relax. Like, you know, you do kind of relax when you smoke cigarettes, or I kind of relax if I'm eating, but all in all, they're not really super healthy in the long term. So finding healthier ways to take our timeouts and relax, which, and, you know, again, we never really taught to like even explore that as human beings.
Yeah, and then, you know, usually a lot of us think of relaxing, we'll like scroll on our phones.
Yes.
And stuff. That's
right.
That's not relaxing.
Yeah.
That's still like, you're still engaging your will and you're choosing what to click on, and you're not really relaxing when you're doing that. I would say, I mean, generally you're not. Some people may find that relaxing. Of course, everyone's different.
One thing that I'd like to do more of is just put on a really fun song and like dance to it. Because I always love...
You can have a dance party every hour.
Yeah, I always love doing that. I'm always so happy when I do that. And I've been trying to do that more as a way to relax and like take a time out.
You were doing that the other night.
Yeah.
With the Christmas music.
Right, when I was cooking.
Right.
Yeah, instead of like overeating. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's important to realize any of our addictions or habits that are not necessarily balanced, right? And so I think that's sort of what we tend to want to strive towards is a balance and you know, just a noticing that, oh, maybe I'm working too much or, I'm putting too much pressure on myself to work or I'm, smoking or whatever it is. But whatever these habits are, balancing them and, trying to choose what's best, for yourself, right?
Yeah. And this just is always this practice of self-reflection and observing ourselves, observing our feelings, observing our behaviors, almost just like zooming out as like a mother hen to ourselves in a way, like, oh, like look at how I'm behaving and look at what I'm doing and look at what I'm feeling and maybe what would be a little bit better for me. It feels like this ongoing practice of, I mean, it's really just taking care of ourselves, but just really looking out for ourselves on that larger zoomed out level, like, oh, look at the things I am doing and maybe shifting it a little bit could be better. Just like this ongoing practice
Yeah.
of self-reflection and shifting and yeah, and it's intense because usually we're all quite busy, so
Yeah.
even taking that time of self-reflecting and making these shifts, like sometimes can be hard just
Yep.
to take that time.
And yeah, I would suggest too working on one thing at a time, probably.
Yes, totally. That's such a great point.
If you drink a bunch or if you drink daily and then you also smoke, you probably don't want to quit both of those at the same time.
Yeah, yes. I really love that. Take one thing at a time.
You'll probably want to quit alcohol first because
Yeah.
alcohol tends to make you want to smoke.
Yep,
So
right.
quit alcohol and then keep smoking. Maybe cope with the smoking.
Yeah, right. Give yourself a lot of grace. And you don't
Yeah.
have to shift everything at once.
That's the important thing too. Don't it makes it so much harder when you're beating yourself up about either you got yourself into this position, you're beating yourself up about that, or you're beating yourself up about just how you feel. Whenever you're like, it takes the negativity that's already there, like the crappy feelings, and like makes
Yeah.
it worse and worse. So
Yeah.
try to like be positive about yourself. It's difficult too. It's really challenging, I find, but trying to do that is really helpful, I think.
Yeah, just this whole orientation of like love, grace, patience with yourself, and at the same time being truthful with what you see. But yeah, not rushing and forcing yourself to shift too quickly and just sort of one thing at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it all boils down to just inner truth, like just really, really looking at yourself and what you're doing and maybe how you'd like to shift and just having faith that you can move in those directions. Yeah, just truth, grace, love, all those really important practices.
Yeah. I'm trying to think what else we could talk about with addictions. There's been a lot of chat.
Yeah, let me see if there's anything. Dancing is great.
Oh, licorice, black pepper oils for quitting smoking, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, external pressure didn't
Yeah,
work.
taking a walk, Debbie, that's a really good idea. I think taking a walk is always good. And just going for a walk. That's actually probably what I'll do. Just do a little walk. Maybe I'll put my headphones on.
Yeah, instead of the smoke.
Yeah, listen to an audiobook or something and go for a little walk. It'll be good for my body. But then also it'll just sort of clear my head. I think that the cravings last, I think, around 10 minutes usually.
Mm-hmm.
So, they can, that can help a lot. Just sort of distract yourself a bit. Distract yourself through the craving with something positive.
Yeah.
That seems wise.
Yeah. And I think also just an awareness that our society is somewhat built around our addictions. Like say most parties, there's tons of food and alcohol and just the way our society is even structured is just a lot around behaviors that maybe aren't always serving us. So to just give ourselves grace around that we've just been growing up and living in a society where it's really easy to fall into addictive behaviors.
So easy. And also these, try to remember as well that these addictive things, the reason that we are doing them from the sort of the higher self perspective or the higher dimensional perspective of what we're doing is we're exploring our self-discipline. We're exploring our ability to use our willpower to shift our behaviors, our habits, things like that. We're like literally learning how to do that. Learning how to notice when things are dragging on our energies. That's what all of this, I think, is about. And then basically traversing that and learning how to handle all of the stress, how to sit with ourselves better. If we used to be intoxicated a lot, how to sit in sobriety and accept all of that. And, I think that that's like sort of the bigger picture. So you can sort of be thankful that I developed this issue that now I'm working through. Because without any of these challenges or difficulties, we wouldn't really grow as people. So these are some of the ways that we manifest for ourselves, ways to explore our own discipline. If we weren't taught discipline or willpower as children very well, then we tend to need to explore it some other way. And that's one of my theories around how this ends up happening. And discipline is like a double-edged sword, I think. So you have to be careful with discipline, because you can make yourself so rigid with things that there's no bending, and then you're in another bit of trouble. So I think discipline's a good thing when it's balanced. Yeah.
I love that you use the phrase "be with yourself," and I think that is just so true. That sometimes we just feel so uncomfortable being with ourselves and feelings that are arising that we turn to addictive things. And then another point that we haven't really fleshed out too much yet in this talk is that when we are with ourselves and we are being with ourselves and we're being with our inner truth rather than grabbing for a substance or behavior to basically distract or numb us, when we really sit there, we may really see things in our life that we would like to shift. I just know from my personal experience with fellow moms, so many moms that I've known just sort of drinking at night, drinking wine. It's kind of like a joke, like, Mom, where's my wine?
Yeah, I saw these socks that on the bottom of it said, if you can read this, hand me my wine.
Right.
It's like a joke.
It's kind of like a thing that a mom and a dad too, at night you're going to have like a couple glasses of wine. And not to say that wine in itself is wrong or something, but just to say that, am I like medicating myself because I'm unhappy? Like what's underneath all of that? And so I just think that when we break down our addictions and we look at what we're really feeling, and then we really look at our lives, are there substantive shifts we can make in our lives that are really being called for?
Right.
Rather than turning to these addictions.
I'd like to say too that we are creatures of habit and conditioning.
Yeah.
We could call literally everything we do an addiction in a way. Everything we do is habitual. All of our thinking is habitual. Everything is conditioned. So, what we do before we get in the car, or everything that we do is sort of habitual in many ways. So, whenever these habits, taking a minute to look at some of these habits and just decide, oh, that maybe isn't so good, but maybe the glass of wine at night is just something that you really enjoy, and it doesn't have any negative things. You know, there's been reports from physicians that a glass of wine helps with oxidization, helps with the heart and stuff. You know, so perhaps that there's no issue there, right? But it's all sort of self-determined, I think, right? I think that's what we're saying, right?
Yeah.
Review it yourself and try to see if it feels best and try to evaluate why you're doing it.
Exactly. I think underneath everything we're saying, it's really about what is your inner truth. Like underneath the addictions, what is the truth? And we just want to get to that truth, whatever that truth is. And often the addictions just kind of take us away from the truth. Because sometimes the truth is really scary. Like we might be in a marriage that really isn't working, or a career that really isn't, feeding our soul. So I think if you're getting to your inner truth and really then living your inner truth, you're not going to need the addictive behaviors. And you might still enjoy a glass of wine too.
Yeah.
So I think like the underlying thing is, what is your inner truth? And are you living your inner truth? And do things maybe need to shift a bit in your life?
Are you attached? Does it drag on you? Is there a part of you that's kind of knows it's not really the best for you?
Yeah.
That's a good indicator.
Yeah.
For me with smoking, there was always a part of me that was like, I don't think this is probably the best for me. But with smoking, I also wasn't sure if that was just programming. So I kind of, rebelled against that a little bit. But there's usually a part of us that realizes that behavior isn't quite good for us. Like we really like it or we want to do it. We'll make a lot of excuses to continue it. But at the end of it, every time we do it, we're kind of like, there's a part of us that knows, I think.
Yeah.
And if we can notice that little part of us, that's, I think, our subtle inner self, inner being sort of saying, maybe this isn't the best, but you do you.
Yeah.
Right? That sort of thing.
Yeah.
If we can notice that feeling, then we can pinpoint some of these areas.
Yeah. I think I'll just give like one last example in my own life about this practice of inner truth. So I've been sharing that I often overeat, especially at night when I'm like cooking dinner for my kids and I'm tired and I'm bored. And so the inner truth underneath all of that is the way I've structured my life is kind of difficult and is not really serving me in this role of I do everything as the mother in the household. Like, I do all the cleaning, all the cooking, all of that. And my thinking mind may start to think, well, there's nothing I can do about it. That, like, how could this really shift? So then I just like keep eating, thinking like I can't shift it. But I think the point here is that, okay, I see I'm overeating because I'm bored and stressed. And underneath that is the inner truth that the way my life is structured right now is probably not highest and best, with me doing everything around the household. And the thinking mind comes in and says, well, how can you shift that? So what we always say is like, let go of the hows, let go of like how it can shift, but just realize what the truth is. The truth is that this probably isn't highest and best, and just have faith that leaning into that truth and embodying that truth, that something will move forward with that spirit will show you the way to a highest and best. And that I don't need to lean on overeating. I need to lean on what is the truth and asking spirit for help and moving forward in that way. But like releasing the hows. Because I think often we might drink or do other things because things aren't quite right in our lives, but we don't know what to do about it. We don't know how to make it better.
Yeah, basically.
So we keep numbing and distracting ourselves.
And usually those things do work temporarily. They do temporarily aid us.
Yeah, they're just like toxic Band-Aids. Yeah. So I'm just realizing this myself, that just sitting in the truth of, oh, this is like really stressful and boring the way I've set up some of my life, and not reaching for the food to temporarily numb myself basically, but can I just sit in that truth and then see what unfolds from me being in that truth.
Mm-hmm.
So I think just this courageous deep dive into your own inner truth that's underneath the addictive behaviors.
Yeah, I think a practice of evaluating everything you're doing always is very wise to try and adopt. Every time you're doing anything, just ask yourself, why am I doing this? Who am I doing this for? Why am I doing this? Am I serving someone? Am I serving myself? Why do I feel like this is important right now? What am I doing? Right? And just keep this self-inquiry.
Yep.
You get to the root of a lot of things that way, and start to sort of get an idea of who you are and why you're conditioned the way you are, where you're, like I said, we're creatures of habit, creatures of conditioning. We're always going to follow our conditioning. But if we can understand what our conditioning is, we can then sort of dismantle it and create our new conditioning however we want. Once we start to kind of grasp it, in order for us to do that, though, we have to look at ourselves constantly. So I always advocate for that. Just keep looking at yourself. Try to be as honest as you can. We'll lie to ourselves, and that's okay. We'll start to notice when we're doing that. But it's all through looking at ourselves that we end up noticing all of this stuff. If we don't do that, then we're going to end up just sort of blindly following our conditioning.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, it just seems like inner truth is sort of the core piece here, underneath the addictions. And just to have faith that when we're courageous enough to really be in our inner truth, that spirit, our higher selves, will show us the way, and that the external will shift as our inner truth is, as we honor it and validate it, and as we shift internally, then the external reality will shift as well. So
absolutely,
yeah, I think it's about inner truth. I didn't realize we'd end up here. It's interesting to me.
Yeah,
I feel it's about inner truth.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. All right, we figured that out.
I know I saw that Emily came in at the end. Thank you for joining us, Emily. We're gonna have to read the chat a little bit after, but appreciate you showing up. I think we're done now. Right?
We got to go deal with our addictions.
I'm gonna go have a cigarette.
I'm gonna try not to overeat. I'm just gonna sit in my truth.
I'm gonna go eat in front of her. All right, thanks so much for watching. Click the like button if you haven't already. It really helps out. If you want to subscribe as well, that's always beneficial. And
we have an awesome ever-growing Patreon community, which is just delightful. And there's information about joining that in the description. That also really helps us continue our work.
Yeah. If you join the $15 or $30 tier, you'll get access to the. We did a course just last week, and so we have the recording up for that. We'll have another course. We'll do course after course, month after month. We're starting with like some foundational stuff, and then we're going to get into more intermediate and advanced, I think, type things.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's going to be fun.
Yeah, I'm totally excited. And thank you so much for being with us, and so much love to you, and so much great energy for you and your inner truth.
Yeah. Take care.
Bye.